So you found the skeleton. How would you tell people that was you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Ah, yes, come in. No, Dapper is gone again. Sorry, it's only me here. But it's nice to have an audience of such delicious-looking humans. But I promised Dapper that I would eat before I did this for him, so you don't have to worry. At least, not yet. Anyway, when Dapper left, he was talking about two Muslim apologists, Sabur Ahmad and the Muslim Lantern. Only the latter of which was bothering to speak much last time, and that's not about to change. Lantern Man is in the middle of telling us how his various links that he put up on StreamYard are actually evidence of biologists faking evidence for evolution, and then that they're still using this faked evidence to bolster the theory of evolution. The first two examples were Archaeoraptor and Piltdown Man, and neither fit the bill as described by Mr. Lantern. So, let's see what other buffoonery these two have for us.
Let's go to a third link.
I think that's what's called a smoke alarm low battery chirp. Seems like Mr. Lantern needs to check his alarm. We wouldn't want someone burning down whatever building he's in. I've seen what happens when a city is on fire, and I do believe he would not be happy with such an event.
So, baboon found in famous Lucy skeleton, right?
Yes, a partial cervical vertebra long associated with Lucy was found to actually belong to Therapithecus, a baboon.
If anyone knows about the Lucy skeleton, we're going to talk about it in depth as well.
Oh good, a whole in-depth ad hominid discussion. Hopefully that happens when Dapper is back, so I don't have to deal with it.
Baboon bones are found in it. Baboon bones are found in it, right?
Wrong. One baboon bone was found, and the same paper went on to affirm that the entire rest of the skeleton was in fact part of a single Australopithecus, and also went on to note that this did not actually affect any reconstruction of Australopithecus afarensis, meaning that it doesn't affect Lucy's place in the human family tree at all.
Okay. Now, coming back to the slides. Let's come back to the slides for a second.
What? No actual discussion of what meaning we're supposed to take away from this misidentified bone in the Lucy specimen? That's disappointing, just like humans so often are.
All of these are articles saying the same thing, sir. So I'm going to save you the time, right? I'm going to save you the time.
It's not saving me any time, I promise. I just get these talking points from Dapper. So, link 1. That's just the paper about Archaeoraptor. Dapper covered it. Link 2. That's just the article about Piltdown Man, which Dapper already covered. Link 3. That's about Java Man, which is not a hoax, but whose fossils were lost and presumably destroyed during World War II. And the article is from Answers in Genesis, even though Mr. Lantern said he wouldn't be bringing any creationist sources. Looks like he is a liar after all. How very interesting. Link 4. This is just the story about the baboon bone found associated with Lucy. I already covered that one. Link 5. This is about Darwinius Massili, which is not a fake or hoax in any way. What it is a find that was overhyped by a layman, while actual paleoanthropologists told him it probably wasn't on the line ancestral to humans, and lo and behold, the scientists were right. It was on the line leading to lemurs. And the guy who paid to have a documentary made before the science was in got burned. Not literally, though. It's actually very similar to the Archaeoraptor story. Some fool decided to rush to the press for fame and fortune, only to find out that it was all hubris and he was completely wrong. Link 6, this is just a 14-year-old paper that argues that Ardipithecus is older than previously thought, and so is basal to humans as well as gorillas and chimpanzees. It does not seem to have swayed the mainstream, and nothing about it even hints at a hoax. Perhaps Mr. Lantern, indeed, is as stupid as he looks. I mean, he doesn't even have enough eyes. Link 7. This is an article about whether Archaeopteryx should be classified as a bird. Nothing about hoaxes. The only way I can see someone thinking that this is a problem for evolution is if he just never understood evolution in the first place. Link 8 is a 30-year-old paper saying that lungfish are more closely related to tetrapods than coelacanths. This is both true and not a problem for evolution. I can't even imagine why this is here. Link 9. This is a paper about the fact that stem tetrapod trace fossils predate stem tetrapod body fossils, which is true, but also it's common for trace fossils to predate the first body fossils for various taxa, simply because you can leave many trace fossils in a lifetime, but unless you're a trilobite, you probably can only leave one body fossil in a lifetime. Link 10, this is an article from 93 years ago, pointing out that Hesperopithecus was a misidentified peccary tooth. It wasn't a hoax, it was a layman not knowing how to tell the difference, and being corrected quite quickly after he went to the press about his alleged find. So once again, we have scientists correcting a layperson who rushed to the press, just like with Darwinius massillae and Archaeoraptor. It's almost like there's some kind of common thread of fate among the amateur fossil hunters. Link 11, this is just a paper saying that the Orsay skull, something I'm sure most of you humans have never heard of, wasn't a hominid skull, it was an equid skull. I don't know of anyone saying this was a hoax. I also don't know anyone using it as evidence for anything, except that you need to be careful when you examine fragmentary fossils. Link 12, this is yet another article from a creationist. This time it's a 3-paragraph nothing vomited out by fraudster Casey Luskin over at the Discovery Institute. Basically, it complains that Ernst Haeckel was a fraud, which is not evidently true and is instead some fair bit of projection. I will say, though, that I would prefer that embryo photographs be used, since those are now easily available. Finally, we come, at last, to Link 13. Lucky Link 13. This is just a series of 5 case studies of 3 people who had what looked like tails but weren't, and 2 people who did in fact have true tails, which is an atavistic trait that is really only explained by evolution. This seems like it might have come back to bite Mr. Lantern had he bothered to talk about it.
Some of the look, why A the fossil is not the missing link. You can find even in the link of the thing say some statements about these things, right? So all of these are talking about the same thing. All of it are forgeries, right?
Explain in the comments how anyone is supposed to take that as anything but a lie after actually visiting all those links. He must just assume his audience is stupid, given they're probably human. I suppose that might not be the worst assumption, but still.
We had an example of here, Science Magazine, claiming that there was a specific thing, in the end it's a pig tooth.
I thought we weren't going to go through all of these. Oh well. Yes, this is the so-called Nebraska man.
They draw an actual creature, a whole creature, you know, based on one tooth.
Yes, they did, but the they in this case isn't scientists, it's a British tabloid. The fact that a British tabloid made up some ape based on the report of a non-scientist American isn't exactly evidence of bad conduct among evolutionary biologists almost a century ago.
One tooth, they drew an actual creature saying that creature was called X, Y, and Z. He was walking and going around here. He's doing X, Y, and Z. And in the end, oh, sorry, we discovered it's a pig tooth, right? Let me actually open that link. Let me open that link for a second.
Yes, it was indeed scientists who discovered that the claims of some guy in a British tabloid weren't true. I'm not sure why Lantern thinks this is such a good thing for him.
So it is like, honestly, like embarrassing. That's what I would say.
Yes, I too would be embarrassed if I mixed up a tabloid and a peer-reviewed scientific publication.
What those people do, when we find their mistakes, they try to even justify it in a different way. Like, for example, look, you say, apparently not a man or ape. But you're claiming it is a man and ape, and it is a missing link and all of that. So what happened now?
Now, no one talks about Hesperopithecus except for creationists who don't know the first thing about science. That's what happens now.
This is another example here, right? There was a part of a skull that they found. And they drew a whole picture again and all of that, and they said that these are transitional creatures, etc. In the end, there was a skull of a donkey, right?
Yes, this is the Orsay skull, and ultimately it's the same basic story as with Nebraska Man. There's very little of interest that's different between the two, so take my bits about the Nebraska Man and apply it here. Let's skip ahead until he talks about the next thing. I don't want to go in depth on something that will just be repetitive.
Which shows how these people use all of these false evidences to try to justify, as if they have evidences for what they say, when in reality they got nothing supporting what they say, right?
Oh, so all the species of Australopithecus, Ardipithecus, Sahelanthropus, Paranthropus, and all but one species of Homo are fake. Where's the evidence of that? Nowhere. That's where.
We've got Haeckel's drawings, right? If you speak to someone today, as I said to you, someone who a little bit learned about evolution and this and that. If you talk to him about Haeckel's drawing, all he's going to say to you, oh, this is a long time ago, disputed, and this. That's what they say. But these are used in medical textbooks.
I don't know about medical textbooks, but I would expect them in general biology textbooks. And no, I don't like that they're being used. But the point about evolution being evident in embryology is true regardless. even if it's not exactly how Haeckel thought it worked. Photographs show the same evidence Haeckel was showing in his drawings. Also, it wasn't a hoax or a fraud. There's not a trace of evidence of Haeckel ever being convicted of fraud, and even the people who first proposed that he was a fraud retracted the claim after further investigation.
Yeah.
Until 2013. This link I have, it's showing you how many textbooks it is used in, up to 2013. Yeah. Even though this idea was refuted in 1909.
No.
The idea that embryology exactly capitulates evolution was rejected, but evolution is still evident in embryology, and it can be seen in Karl Ernst von Baer's laws of embryology, which are in fact still alive and well.
So, Darwin's time, So this idea was refuted at Darwin's time to be forgeries.
They have never been shown to be forgeries. They did use other drawings for reference for embryos that Haeckel couldn't get a hold of himself. That's not forgery, but it's also a good reason to replace the drawings with actual photographs, as Dapper has long advocated for.
But they're still using today in scientific textbooks and medical textbooks until 2013. Are you now saying to me that they did not know this basic information that me, someone who's not specialized in the medical field, knows?
No, that is not what I'm doing, because I don't think Lanton knows any special information. He instead thinks he knows things, but rather he has just bitten off some misinformation and swallowed it whole.
So I know that this is a forgery, but the people who are doctors, professors that are writing books, medical fields, professors teaching students, they don't know that this is a forgery?
The only way Lanton could know if these drawings are a forgery is if he has new evidence. I suppose that's possible, and I would encourage him to publish that information somewhere besides on a YouTube live stream.
And they still have it in their medical textbooks? Or is it that they know, but they don't care?
Neither. It's that this pseudoscience advocate is wrong. But that's not something that he'll think up. He must almost think as highly of himself as I think of myself. And that's not easy to accomplish.
Or is it that they know this is fake, but they don't care, and they want to push forward whatever they believe in? This is the other idea that we had of the human tail.
I bet he lies and says that none of the tales were actually tales, even though 40% of the ones talked about were called true tales in the paper.
Right? Say humans are born with tails, and these tails used to be from apes and from all of these different types of animals. And in the end, it is a disease called lipoma, and there's many different names for that specifically. It's a skin disease where you have an extra part of the skin coming out.
Yes, that was 60% of the cases. What about the other 40%? We shouldn't mention that, should we? The true human tail, it is true, does not contain vertebra or spinal tissue, but it does indeed develop from the tail that is normally absorbed in the week 8 of human gestation, meaning that while it lacks many of the features of a tail you might expect in a dog or a cat, it simply is not true to say that it is unrelated to such tails. It develops from the same tail that all mammals have as an embryo. The fact that the condition has a name doesn't negate this.
Right. Yep. So what is it that I'm trying to show here?
That he doesn't care about Surat An-Nisa Ayah 107, one of several ayat that says not to lie or support those who do?
Is when they do not have evidence for something, because they worship this thing as a religion. That's why I compare them with Christianity.
Science isn't dogma. You're just stupid.
They worship it to be a religion. And their idea and their understanding, this is like a religion. So if I don't have evidence for something that I already believe in, then I will make up evidence to support what I believe in. Okay?
It is good to know that both Christian and Muslim creationists are equally good at projection.
Yeah.
And I'll try to inshallah, comment with my channel, put all of these links. There's so many links there. So I'll try to gather all of these links for the people, one by one, and then people can look at if they want to look at it, inshallah. Okay?
Oh, don't worry. Dapper has also put these links in the description. I dare you to read them.
We've got... Now moving on to what I would call fictional characters. But first I want to ask this question. Maybe you can tell me maybe if you know this common knowledge, right? Do you know when they say is the first appearance of Homo sapiens?
Estimates vary, but it's about 200,000 to 300,000 years ago.
How long ago?
I already answered.
Do you know?
Well, our species, they would say around 200,000 years.
200,000 years, right? 195, 5 give or take, which is what you just said. So this is what they say. Okay, so this is the common knowledge.
Is there a point to this diversion?
Brother Sabur. This is what people are spreading. This is if you go to a person, this is what they will say to you. But we'll move on now to talk about this above it, okay?
No, it would seem there was no point. Dapper probably isn't paying me enough for this, which means I should probably remind you that he has a Patreon listed in the description, as well as a merch store. You can also become a channel member by hitting the join button below this video. He also has an Amazon wishlist in the description if you're feeling extra generous. If you pay him enough, maybe he can give me enough to make this worth my time and worth my restraint.
Well, I'm going to say also I'm calling them fictional characters, but not now. So Nature magazine research is what you said here, right? Yeah. Earliest appearance is 195, give or take 5 years. It's in this article that, by Nature, right?
No, not give or take 5 years. 5,000 years. There's a difference. Further, that was for particular specimens of Homo sapiens which were radiometrically and stratigraphically dated. It's not even an attempt at an age or for the origin of the human species. Again, I'm sure Dappa put the link in the description, but it's also on screen in Lantern's video.
Now we have a next article here by Nature. Actually, let me open this article. Now we have a next article that I want to look at here. So let me share my screen. Sorry, apologize. So we said what? 200.
Yeah.
Now they found one that is 300,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah. In Morocco.
300,000 years ago. Now what do they say? Moroccan fossil rearranges Homo sapiens tree.
And of course, that's a Pop Sci article with a title designed to get people to go read it, but that's also misleading. Nothing about this rearranged the family tree of humans. It's simply the then oldest identifiable Homo sapien remains, which were tentatively dated to 300,000 years ago.
So what they found, by the way, this 200 years that they had.
No, that they still had, because finding older bones doesn't mean that the bones from 200,000 years ago are somehow older.
Let me close this for a second. This 200 years gap that they had.
There's no gap. Lantern just cherry-picked finds from 100,000 years apart. He's being some kind of orange-furred cartoon ape.
If your elitist East Coast evolution is real, why has no one found the missing link between modern humans and ancient apes?
We did find it. It's called Homo erectus.
Then you have proven my case, sir. For no one has found the link between apes and this Homo erectus.
Yes, they have. It's called Homo habilis.
Aha! But no one has found the missing link between ape and the so-called Homo habilis.
Yes, they have. It's called Australopithecus africanus.
Oh, I've got you now. Fair enough. But where, then, is the missing link between apes and this Darwinius Masali? Answer me that, Professor.
Oh, okay, granted that one missing link is still missing. But just because we haven't found it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Pshaw! Things don't exist simply because you believe in them. Thus saith the almighty creature in the sky!
It's 200 years that they have the whole family tree based on it.
No, they don't. That's just Lantern being so ignorant that he thinks he can take Pop Sci article headlines at face value.
So now we have to understand the significances of these changes that I'm putting forward now.
He hasn't even demonstrated that there was a change in the first place. He should do that before talking about their significance.
It's not as simple as, okay, yeah, it was 200, it's going to be 300. No. The whole theory is based on that.
The theory of evolution is in no way based on the precise time Homo sapiens became a distinct species.
Yeah.
Right? The whole evolution of the human is based on that because they have this gradualism, they have these periods. This person was in this specific period of time. This animal transitions from here to there. It gradually evolved in this specific way. So it's not just simple changes. This has to rearrange the whole family tree. Okay? So they said 300,000 years. Let's move on to the next thing that they say, okay? Let me share my screen. So it's not 300,000 years. Actually, it's according to this, is the first Europeans' remains in Spain. It is actually 780,000 years.
Too bad the last paragraph of this points out that the animals they're calling humans in this were not Homo sapiens. That rather means that this isn't a problem for the 300,000-year-old date of the evolution of Homo sapiens. It's almost like Lantern is lying about the content of this paper.
Okay, so what do we have to do now?
If it were up to me, he'd start accurately portraying his sources. That would be nice.
More rearranging. What do you have to do? We have to rearrange again, right?
It's musical chairs.
Yeah, it's a musical chair. Yeah? This chair doesn't fit here. Let's put another chair, right? Okay, let me show another example, right?
Oh, good. More things for Lantern to misrepresent.
Another example. And people don't talk about these things because they only talk about the 200 years. This is what they teach in universities. This is what they talk to students about. This is the old information that they still recycle until today, right? Okay. Let's share screen again. Another face. Look how they're putting it. You know, look how they tried to beautify it. Another face in our family tree. Actually, it's dated to 3.5 million years ago.
This is just a paper by Daniel E. Lieberman, published in 2001 in Nature about Kenyanthropus platyops, a fairly basal hominin ape. I can't imagine what about this paper could be seen as dishonest or a problem for the theory of evolution broadly, or for the story of human evolution.
You know, so it's just another face in our family tree.
Yes, hominins are by definition apes, and those apes closer to genus Homo than to genus Pan. So assuming that Kenyanthropus has been correctly identified as a hominin, it is part of the human family tree. But importantly, it is not a Homo sapiens, which you might have realized already given that it has a different name. Names are important and shouldn't be offered lightly.
Okay, they're trying to put it in a way as if, you know what, there is no issues in that. We don't have a problem, you know what. Okay, we were just telling you this, and the reality is not this, but okay.
Being told the origin of the species Homo sapiens was some 300,000 years ago means of necessity that there were older species in the human lineage before that. So this isn't a contradiction, this is just Lantern being so incredibly stupid, it's hard to see him as any higher in cognitive function than a fainting goat.
Let's do another one, okay? Because I want to read a little bit of what it says here as well. This is screen. The oldest member of the human family found. Voila. Okay. You know? Now let's look.
Yes, let's do. Oh, would you look at that? It's just an article about Sahelanthropus chadensis, who of course is the least virginal of all hominins. Of course, this isn't actually a paper, because why bother citing that when you could cite a non-peer-reviewed pop-sci article that has the same publisher as the actual peer-reviewed journal of Nature. It's dated to just a bit after the likely time of the split between the genera of Homo and Pan. This really is just a parade of Lantern and Ahmed not understanding something so basic as that their great-great-grandparents were born before their grandparents.
TooMany is the tip of the iceberg. On that could sink our current ideas about human evolution. It's not me saying that. It's the guy who found it, you know? Okay? So I think that says wood, yeah? It's not me. I'm not saying that.
Yes, but it is not exactly the consensus of paleoanthropologists saying it either, is it? Sahelanthropus has done no such thing. It just filled in a gap in time somewhere between Auroran tugenensis and Ardipithecus ramidus. If humans descended from a group of apes that split off from the ancestors of chimpanzees some 6 million years ago, there should be a whole parade of not Homo sapiens but hominin apes for the whole time. Turns out that there seem to in fact have been such apes, as predicted and required by evolution. This is just Lantern showing evidence for evolution and then laughing because he's too stupid to understand the difference between a tribe and a species.
Anybody who thinks this isn't going to get more complex isn't learning from history.
Of course it will get more complex. Evolution is about branching patterns, and those are one of the ways you can mathematically define infinitely complex fractals. Evolution approximates this fractal branching, so the more you know about the organisms that have lived on a particular world, the more complex the tree that you can draw. If you wanted to draw a tree of life that just had a human, an ibex, a water monitor, and a lobster, that would be pretty easy to do, and the tree would be quite simple. But what if you wanted to include all known mammal, reptile, and crustacean species, including all the insects? Well now, that would be quite the task, and I doubt anything as limited as a mere human could do it unaided. That the picture of the evolution of a group becomes more complex the more that's learned about that group's ancestry isn't exactly some amazing new insight.
Right?
Yeah.
When I went to medical school in 1963, human evolution looked like a ladder. He says the ladder stopped from monkey to man through a progression of intermediates, each slightly less ape-like. Now human evolution looks like a bush.
Oh, you mean like the kind of branching pattern that evolution is all about? How unexpected.
Okay, we have a mingriofossil hominized group. Okay, so what is he trying to say here?
That paleoanthropology, like most things when you learn more about them, end up being more and more complex than you thought. And that the whole of paleoanthropology has been finding this to be true about their own field.
What is he trying to say? He's trying to say, okay, we had, when I went to university, we had this family tree. Now, because of all of these things that people are trying to avoid.
Yes, they're trying to avoid them so much that they go out looking for them in Africa and bringing them home with fanfare fit for a prince returning from a conquest. Yes, that's what's happening. That's the thing that makes the most sense. One thing that actually does make sense is liking this video and subscribing to Dapper. Why not go ahead and do that now and make sure that you have notifications turned on?
Because as he says, that you cannot avoid this, you cannot escape this. Don't think this is not an issue. This is what he's saying, someone who believes in evolution, who's propagating evolution. He himself is telling you this is an issue.
No, that's not what that quote means. It means we've learned things that are more complex than we first thought, which is pretty normal in science. At one time it was thought that light was just a wave that waved some medium, and that's all there is to it. But then the medium kept on not being detected no matter how hard people tried. And then light waves didn't interact with electrons in a way that made sense for a wave. Then along came Einstein and proposed that actually light is both a wave and also a quantized discrete particle, even though traditionally those were seen as mutually contradictory. Oh, and he also decided to use this insight to also do things like solve the black body catastrophe, and in so doing made everyone realize that the nice model of a more or less Newtonian subatomic world was wrong, and that reality at those scales was far stranger and more complex than anyone had ever thought. Now, do you think that this means that atomic theory is wrong? Hopefully not, but that's the kind of argument Lanton is using here.
He himself is telling you this is rearranging all of what we had. As you said, musical chairs, rearranging everything. So first we found a problem with the idea of the fossil record. They make it up.
The fact that fossils can be identified as forgeries and misidentifications mean that there are real fossils that are not misidentified. Otherwise, there would be nothing to compare them to. Just like art forgery doesn't make sense unless there's a real art to forge. The same thing with the forgery of artifacts. Let's compare this to Islamic history. You see, the Encyclopedia Iranica notes that there have been numerous forgeries of Arabic manuscripts, including Quranic manuscripts. Alislam.org notes that stories about the Prophet of Islam have been forged during his lifetime and ever since. So do you think that Lanton would for this reason say that Islam is just made up? I doubt it. And whether it is or not, that would be a bad argument for it. The majority of the manuscripts we have are not forged, and the fact that forgeries can be detected helps with the whole idea that there are authentic manuscripts. Otherwise, how would you tell the difference? Also, since Arabic has what I consider to be the best calligraphy in the world, you're looking at some Arabic calligraphy.
They have any idea which is a contradiction, they change the premises.
Ah yes, how dare science abandon disconfirmed ideas. I suppose this is a tacit admission from Lanton that he'd stay a Muslim even if Islam were shown to be false. It's a strange thing to boast about, being obstinately wrong and wanting others to be.
They change whatever they used to believe in into something completely different, and they claim as if, oh, there is no issues, right?
No scientists are claiming that there are no issues. That would be the same as saying there is nothing left to learn about the topic. Good luck finding such a topic in science. Also, new conclusions are rarely, if ever, completely different from old ideas, because old ideas in science were held because they had explanatory and predictive power. The new ideas need to have more of both before they're accepted, but that also means that they predict and explain the same data as the old ideas, making it very unlikely they're completely different. Relativity isn't completely different from the ether theory of light, and that's why light is still relevantly described in the parameters of a wave.
Now, this is another example of Nature magazine, 1.8 million. We found a human hand bone, right?
Yes, and on screen it says Homo antecessor, which is not Homo sapiens, so I see no need to go again into a repetition of the same points. Lanton still has the reading comprehension ability of a dried out sea urchin. Speaking of which, it's been far too long since I've had some delicious raw sea urchin scooped out and served with some savory sauces. It's hard to come by here.
1.8 million, so it's not 200 years. It's not 300, it's not 780, it's not 3.5, it's not 6.7, right?
Right, because it's not the same species.
And also in Asia, because some of them are saying all of these bones are found in Africa. No, there is in Asia. There is a Chinese bone that is found that is also older.
I bet it's Homo erectus, which left Africa long before any populations of Homo sapiens did. And of course, on checking, yes, it's about the so-called Peking man, which is Homo erectus. This is getting sadly predictable.
So what we have here is fictional stories.
You might notice that he didn't even pretend to try to show how Sahelanthropus, H. erectus, or H. antecessor were fictional. This is somehow worse than asking if humans evolved from apes, then why are there still apes?
Of fictional trees, of fictional transitional creatures in fictional times that they put forward to the people, and they start drawing and they start rearranging for you one by one, telling you that, look, This is now the tree of the human family. You know, I think the tree of Pokemons have been rearranged less than this. You know.
Yes, because Pokemon is made up, and so doesn't really need much of a revision, because whatever the Pokemon company says is what Pokemon is true. Simply because they said it. I find it interesting that Lantern seems to prefer looking at the world as if it's a lore from a fictional world, more than as if it's a real thing that can be studied and that people can be wrong about, requiring a reconsideration of previously held beliefs. I wonder if that says anything about his relationship to his religion.
Let's move on to the next fictional characters, right? So we have here fictional characters. I'm not gonna even bother to read the first name, yeah?
I'll bother. It's Australopithecus afarensis. It's not fictional. There are hundreds of individuals known to the species. The closest Lantern has come to saying it's fictional is that one bit of vertebra was assigned to this species incorrectly. Of course, he neglects to say that the same paper in which the discovery was announced confirmed that the rest of the skeleton in fact belonged to Australopithecus afarensis, meaning that his own source for this says that it is very much a real species. Also, I must say that I'm very disappointed in Sabur Ahmad here. I've seen him in debates, and he doesn't strike me as nearly as incomprehensibly stupid as his friend here, and yet there's no pushback. Now, that's not to say I think Sabur is right about most things. He's clearly wrong about much of science, and even how science works. But generally, he has seemed to at least have the reading ability of a normal human adult, but perhaps I was being too optimistic with him. He also just seems to be here for emotional support, which I suppose is sweet in a cloying sort of way, but I was hoping for more of a discussion in the video, rather than a largely incoherent rambling monologue punctuated with too much repetition and annoying laughter.
That's why they called it Lucy. They changed the name from that name to Lucy, right?
What? No, Lucy is just a nickname for a particular individual of the official catalog number AL288-1, whose species is Australopithecus afarensis. Her name has not been changed, nor has her species been determined to be invalid.
So those are the four main ones that they use today. They moved away from most of the other ones.
I feel like most paleoanthropologists would be surprised to hear that the main hominins are Australopithecus afarensis, Homo habilis, H. erectus, and H. neanderthalensis. I feel like they are still very much involved in the study of Aurorans, Sahelanthropus, Paranthropus, Ardipithecus, as well as various other Australopithecus and Homo species, such as A. garhi and H. heidelbergensis.
And now they focus on those four main ones: Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, and Lucy, right?
No, not right. In fact, that's just blatantly wrong, as we can see because Lantern himself provided us with a bunch of sources about other species than these four.
So, Lucy, here there is an article from Science Daily. It says that it has an ape-like brain.
Well, it's an ape, so yes. Really what they mean is it has a relatively basal brain. And yes, Lucy is a relatively basal member of the human lineage. You see, if humans evolved from basal apes, which is the claim of evolution, we should expect to see basal members of the human lineage. Lo and behold, we do. This is evidence for evolution, not against it. If all we had were basal Miocene apes and then suddenly modern humans, that would be suspicious, and I'm sure Lantern would be crowing about it from the minarets because of the lack of transitional hominins.
And the rest of the bones that they have, they actually collected from different things.
I don't know what that means.
So collecting a bone from here, a bone from there, a bone from different country, and then assembling them together to try to have a human-looking like creature that evolved from something. Today you can do that. You can bring a little head of a monkey and a hand of a human being and a tail of a rat and then gather them together and say that this was a creature that was evolving, right?
Sure you can, but it has never actually happened. I could burn a Quran in a trash can and use the fire to cook a nice pork sausage. Doesn't mean I'm doing that. For one thing, my copies were too expensive for cooking material. If you want to say that something like that happened, you have to provide evidence for it. It's just like with conspiracy theories. If you want to propose that there's a vast conspiracy to hide children in the basement of a pizza shop that doesn't have a basement, you have to actually have evidence for it, especially before you break into the place with weapons. If Lantern is saying that any currently accepted hominin species are chimeras, he'll have to argue for it. I'll tell you now, though, that John Sanford and Christopher Roop already tried that in their book Contested Bones, and they failed spectacularly, and I suspect that at least Sanford is much smarter than Lantern. Roop seems like a moron with the intellectual capacity of a slug, though, so I don't know about him.
So they themselves, they say, actually, no, that's not from Homo sapien tree. That's actually, it has an ape-like brain.
Humans are apes, so having an ape brain in no way removes Australopithecus from the hominin lineage. It's like saying your dog is too mammalian to be a dog. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, this paper is saying that Lucy had such a big brain that her species needed extensive and lengthy parental care. I wonder what modern ape species has mewling babies that can't survive on their own for over a decade. It probably isn't humans, right?
Okay, we move to the Homo habilis. The same thing. Ape-like bones, right?
This is a link to a paper by Walpoff et al. From 1994 in which the authors argue that there are too many species of Homo and that they should mostly be combined into Homo sapiens, which would presumably also bring in H. antecessor H. neanderthalensis and a number of other late members of genus Homo into Homo sapiens. Ironically for Lantern, one of the reasons for this is because of how transitional Homo erectus is. Basically, this paper is just arguing for a different name, and Lantern, being either too stupid to read the paper or just too dishonest to represent it correctly, is instead saying that this paper is trying to overturn Homo erectus as a part of the evolutionary story of humans, which it is in no way doing. I am now realizing why Dappa generally doesn't bother with Muslim creationists. This guy is no smarter than Uncooked Matthew and has even less charisma. Why are Muslim apologists so insufferably boring? Although, depending on how strict they are with Islamic iconoclasm, perhaps that's not an option. Lastly, the URL he gave is one of those short URLs. Dappa has put the full URL in the description.
We move on to the Homo erectus, or erectus. It's the same thing. There's a link here that talks about sinking the Homo erectus. It's a whole research showing you how the Homo erectus is sinking.
Homo erectus walked upright, and the name means upright man. I don't see why this is mocking. Unless, of course, Lantern is so juvenile as to take everything as a joke about penises. Maybe he's just gay. It's fine by me. I just hope that he doesn't move to any of the countries where his co-religionists have implemented a version of their religious law, because then he might get thrown off a building.
You know, because it's from erect, right? Erecting. So they're even making puns about their own, they're even mocking their own evidences, right?
Wrong, and the source used for this claim actually requires the evidence for Homo erectus' existence to be accurate, or it makes no sense to ask for it to be reclassified. You don't reclassify an animal that never existed in the first place.
So he's thinking there is no evidence for the Homo erectus as people are claiming, right?
That's not even what the article said about it. It's not even Homo erectus, but rather the robust Australopithecines, and it is arguing against naming a new species in that group. It has nothing to do with H. erectus at all. Lantern, I am now comfortable calling a liar. There's no way he looked at that paper that just broadly advocates for fewer species named, and specifically against naming a new species of robust Australopithecine, and thought it was a paper arguing that Homo erectus is fake, or not part of the hominin family tree. Either he read the paper and lied about it, or he didn't read it and just put it in his list of references, thinking that no one would check. But I checked.
And here, in this Nature article, it says it could be from Homo sapiens, actually. It could be included in Homo sapiens tree. It's not really it's not really Homo erectus. It's actually from the tree of the Homo sapiens, right?
That is not a meaningful sentence, which seems to be common with this particular person.
You look at another research. Actually, let's open this last one, Life Science. Let me open this one.
Okay. An article about Homo erectus is very similar to modern humans in terms of morphology and ecology. It also directly calls H. erectus ancestral to modern humans. Let's see how Lantern ruins it.
Because I want to read some of the phrases that they have in there.
Well, at least this way we can be sure he's actually reading things in the article. This might count as a literacy test for Lantern.
And I want everyone to bear with me, by the way. I know, look, I'm going to present to you a lot of things, but the point I want to do is this, is I don't want to leave anyone excuses later on, coming and saying, okay, but what about this, but what about that? I'm going to give you a crazy amount of forgeries, a crazy amount of lies, a crazy amount of what they claim to be the evidence, how they themselves admit that it's not evidence for anything.
So far it's been 2 forgeries and 3 misidentifications, then lots of lies from Lantern. I suppose it's crazy just how much one man can get so many papers wrong.
And they still come to you trying to convince you that this is some sort of a accepted fact, okay?
Again with not providing clear reference for pronouns. What's the word this referring to? If it's that Piltdown Man is real, then no, it's not an accepted fact. If it's that Australopithecus afarensis and Homo erectus are real and a part of the story of the human evolution, which actually happened making humans a kind of ape, then yes, it is indeed an accepted fact, and no matter how many articles Lantern misrepresents or misunderstands, that's not likely to change anytime soon.
Let's look here, sharing this one, okay? Homo erectus, facts about the upright man, yeah? Let's look about the facts that they say, no thank you, okay? And I want to say something important here. Let me see the part I want to talk about. Okay. Bird on mother only for 200 years homeworks. Upland had longer range. Oh, yeah. What I wanted to say is this. Do you see this part called lineage?
Yes, I do. Anyone who's watching and not blind can see it because it's being shared. Does Lantern also not understand how videos work?
Yeah? I opened the same link a while ago. This part here called lineage was in the beginning.
It may well have been, although there's no indications of a revision on the website that I can see, so I doubt it.
But what they did is they took this part and they changed it with this. I'll tell you why, because you're going to start reading now what it says.
So he's claiming that they changed the order of the sections of this article to hide the lineage section. The article itself is quite short. I somehow doubt that anyone rearranged it to prevent people from reading one part of an article that would barely take up 2 pages in a magazine.
Right? Why did they remove it from the beginning of the research? Because they don't want people to be reading this in the beginning, right? The lineage of evolutionary history of Homo erectus and other Homo sapiens is unclear, and it has been muddied further by recent finds. Okay?
Okay.
Homo erectus was once thought to have evolved from an earlier human ancestor known as the Homo habilis, somewhere in East Africa is the start to it. Okay, false information.
Just saying it's false doesn't make it so, and given how badly Lantern has misrepresented all the previous articles, I think it would be safer to say he's automatically wrong about everything he says on this topic, than to say his statements provide evidence for the truth of his claims. And yes, I know that technically that's the genetic fallacy, but guess what? People use heuristics that are technically fallacious, but good enough all the time. And that's why I said safer, rather than indicating it's an actual reliable logical guide to truth.
However, there is much disagreement about whether these populations are actually Homo erectus. Confusing matters more. After analyzing the new skull, okay, scientists also do not agree about Homo erectus directed. I can go on and on and on, right?
He could, but that might undermine his point. Let me go on and on by just reading the article. The lineage and evolutionary history of H. erectus and other Homo species is unclear and has been muddied further by recent finds. Homo erectus was once thought to have first evolved from an earlier human ancestor known as Homo habilis, somewhere in East Africa. It was thought that Homo erectus then spread out to inhabit South Africa and parts of Europe, Spain and Italy, the Caucasus, India, China, and Indonesia. However, there's much disagreement about whether these populations were actually H. erectus, or if they should be considered other species. According to Van Arsdale's H. erectus review, some experts argue H. erectus is restricted largely to Eastern and Southeastern Asia. Some fossils from West Asia and Africa should be considered Homo ergaster, and European remains should be described as Homo heidelbergensis. Confusing matters more, after analyzing a new skull, called Skull 5, in 2013, researchers made the controversial argument in the journal Science that various contemporary Homo species, including Homo rudolfensis, Homo habilis, and possibly Homo ergaster, were actually Homo erectus. Scientists also don't agree on whether H. erectus is a direct human ancestor to Homo sapiens. I will put it as an ancestral living to humans, Van Arsdale said. That doesn't mean that every fossil is an ancestor to humans, but the species as a whole is. It doesn't seem like this is saying that Homo erectus isn't a part of the story of human evolution at all.
Point is, they don't want that to be in the first page.
There is only one page to this article, and that was on it. It just wasn't at the top of the page, and I just read it out to everyone watching. I have no qualms about people reading it.
Because if that is in the first page, what you see is just further confusion upon further confusion, okay? So let's close this page. Let's go back to the research. And I'm sure, look, people have heard these names.
That's true.
Yeah.
This is what atheists come up with, talking to you about. They assume they existed.
Well, first, this has nothing to do with atheism, but also if you find a body, it is not an assumption that a creature with that anatomy existed. That's what bodies are evidence of. If you decide not to believe in elephants, but I showed up with a whole elephant corpse, it would be pretty damn good evidence that elephants at least used to exist. Similarly, when you find a hominin skeleton, even a partial one, that's proof that hominin existed. Granted, it didn't have a name before you found it, so you get to make up the name if you are the one who first publishes on it, but still, its existence isn't an assumption.
I've seen you talking to maybe an atheist who believes in evolution. He starts mentioning these names to you as if they're facts.
That's because the existence of these animals is indeed a fact.
Right or wrong? He says to you, they've done that, and they've actually done that. Okay, but this is what your nature magazines are saying.
Yeah.
This is what your own research is saying. Okay?
Yes, okay. The fact that Lantern can misrepresent articles and papers isn't exactly a problem for evolution. Nor is it good reason for people who don't promote pseudoscience and deny science to stop accepting human evolution, regardless of whether they are atheists.
Now, the Homo, I'm not going to even mention the name. I'm not going to bother, right? The last one.
Homo neanderthalensis.
This is called the demise of that, whatever that species is called. It's the demise of it. It's the research here showing how it is demise. It is 151 research reviewed, put in that research that I'm putting for you, showing you how it is the demise now of this idea of the existence of the Homo neanderthals, etc., whatever they're called. Right?
No, for the love of all the gods, no. It's a paper arguing for a particular model of Neanderthal extinction. But do you know what an animal has to do in order to go extinct? It has to damn well exist in the first place. Let's read the abstract, shall we? Neanderthals are the best studied of all extinct hominins, with a rich fossil record sampling hundreds of individuals, roughly dating from between 350,000 and 40,000 years ago. Their distinct fossil remains have been retrieved from Portugal in the west, the Altai area in Central Asia in the east, and from below the waters of the North Sea in the north to a series of caves in Israel in the south. Having thrived in Eurasia for more than 300,000 years, Neanderthals vanished from the record about 40,000 years ago, when modern humans entered Europe. Modern humans are usually seen as superior in a wide range of domains, including weaponry and subsistence strategies, which would have led to the demise of the Neanderthals. This systematic review of the archaeological records of Neanderthals and their modern human contemporaries finds no support for such interpretations, as the Neanderthal archaeological record is not different enough to explain the demise in terms of inferiority in archaeologically visible domains. Instead, current genetic data suggests that complex processes of interbreeding and assimilation may have been responsible for the disappearance of the specific Neanderthal morphology from the fossil record. Now, does that sound like a paper arguing that Neanderthals never existed? No, it doesn't. I'm sure Dapper has put the article in the description. If you like, you can do what I had to do and enter the URL myself manually, making like 3 different mistakes before getting it right.
Point is this. If you go to any university today,
something I find it hard to believe Lantern has ever done.
They are teaching you these things are facts.
Yes, for the very good reason that they are.
Yeah.
They're not teaching you that these things are contested.
Well, the existence of the fossils aren't contested, nor is their broad connection to human evolution. But yes, the exact classification scheme and shape of the hominin family tree are contested, because that's the same as saying we don't have complete knowledge of paleoanthropology. I'm sorry that apparently Lantern thinks that learning new things is bad, but as someone who has been paid to appear on a pro-science channel, I'm obliged to inform you that it is generally considered to be a good thing by scientists.
They're confusing.
The confusing thing is how little Lantern can fail to understand even the basic point of virtually every paper he cites.
They actually, these are not bones of humans.
That depends on how narrow a definition of human you want to use.
They're actually bones of apes.
Of course they are. Humans are apes. What point does he think he's making in saying this?
They're not actually what we used to say to you. It's not actually true.
Not the point of any of these papers, at least, if by what we say to you, he means that these fossil taxa are hominins and are a part of the story of human evolution from basal Miocene apes. If it means that some of our past hypotheses about them have been rejected, then sure, that's true. But that's just the same thing as scientific progress. Perhaps Lantern would be happier if he were transported back to the 800s of the Common Era, so he can brush his teeth with a stick, wipe his anus with rocks, but only an odd number, so women can be traded like cattle, and so he can have as many sex slaves as he wants. Of course, it would also come with virtually no medical science and a much greater chance of starvation, but don't worry, he can just follow traditional Muslim medicine like drinking camel urine and fly wings. I'm sure that will work out just fine. Maybe if he's feeling really fancy, he can go reach over to the Greco-Roman world and adopt the theory of the humors, too. After all, science has declared that that was wrong, even though it was widely accepted. So I guess that means medical science is nonsense, too. The ever-present call of, why is science? Never gets old, I suppose.
All of these fictional drawings and movies that they make, literally movies, right? It's a movie about Lucy, the baboon skin now. There's a whole movie about it, right? Showing you how she used to live and what she used to do.
Yes, and since the presence of that one partial vertebra from a baboon makes no difference to any reconstruction of Lucy, it represents absolutely no problem for any documentary about Australopithecus afarensis, whether made before or after the discovery of its misidentification.
All of that is coming from an ape brain.
Of course it is. Scientists tend to be humans and humans are apes, so they tend to have ape brains.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? I'm a collection of different fossils from different animals, from different things. Now, these fictional characters, why am I calling them fictional characters? Because they literally are.
No, it's because he's blatantly lying about science to his audience in a truly shameless way.
Imagine constructing a full character from a tooth that later on you found out it's a pig tooth.
I can imagine that if I were the publisher of a tabloid, because remember, it was a British tabloid, not scientists who made that reconstruction of Nebraska Man. It was scientists who looked skeptically and then concluded that, in fact, the man who found it, who was not an expert, had been wrong about its identity. Also, it wasn't a pig tooth, it was a peccary tooth. Peccaries and pigs are in different families, although they are sister families.
And you have this fictional character even children, they have less imagination than this, to be honest, you know. Even DC movies and all that, they are more plausible than these things that they're putting forward, to be honest. They're more plausible, okay? Let's move on.
No, it's not okay to lie like this, but I think I too must move on. Dapper isn't paying me enough to keep talking about this sorry excuse for a being. If you liked this video, hit like and tell Dapper what you liked about it. If you hated it, like I did, hit dislike and tell Dapper what the problem was, such as, this guy is far too dislikable to be in any video ever. Either way, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and that you have turned on all notifications with the little bell icon. Trust me, I can tell if you haven't. Anyway, I'm not giving you my name because I'm not that stupid, but I've been here on behalf of Dapper Dinosaur. Have a good rest of your day.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovend, Phil Javara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Denny5252, Elron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Monkey They Them, Robert Carpenter, Sphincter of Doom, Vollus, Eddie McCoy, Ita V, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.